Oh, yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to call this work session order. This is a work session of the Mayor and Council of the City of Bisbee, County of Cochise, State of Arizona. It's being held on Thursday, April 20th, 2023, at our council chambers, 1:02 p.m. Roll call.
Number one, edit. Councilmember Joni Giacomino. Here. Councilmember Freddie Davis is not here. Mayor Ken Bush.
Here.
Councilmember Leslie Jones. Here. Councilmember Malcolm. Mayor Pro Tem Anna Klein. Here. City staff, Stephen Hawkins, City Manager, Ashley Coronado, Clerk, Logan Dodd, Operations Manager.
Thank you. Called this work session just so that we can kind of get this all out in the open and understand what's going on with our airport. Myself, and I think people feel this is a great asset to our city, and that do some different situations. We're getting money for the last number of years through the FAA because of certain rules. Just wanted to get everybody on the same idea of what it is that we're going to try to do to make this. We're all, I think, for the most part, which is
Working on that.
okay. Sorry.
Okay, I just got it.
Okay. Yeah, people have a tendency to not mute themselves. Feedback. All right. So with that, the place I thought would be the best place to start is with our FAA officials that have kindly come down from Phoenix today. And so Mike Williams is here, and I'll let him introduce his partner and give us kind of an oversight of what we're kind of been up against, and hopefully what we can do to get things resolved. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Good afternoon. It is truly our honor to be here. I've had occasion to visit your community on personal business in the past. Always a pleasure to be here today. As the mayor mentioned, my name is Mike Williams. I represent the Federal Aviation Administration Airports Division. I'm the manager of our Airports District Office, which is in Phoenix. Kyler Earhart is part of my staff. Kyler is the lead program manager within the ADO. So just to give you a little background, the Federal Aviation Administration, like all government agencies, is large and sometimes hard to understand. Sometimes we even struggle ourselves with making sure we're talking to the right entities within the agency. The Airports Division works with public use airports throughout the United States on various safety standards, land use, planning, engineering, environmental tasks associated with an airport. And we also participate in the processing of federal assistance grants, principally the Airport Improvement Program, but also most recently the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law as well. Our office in Phoenix was established in the fall of 2012. We have oversight and work with state airports in the states of Arizona and Nevada. Prior to our office being established, Arizona fell under our Los Angeles office, and Nevada fell under our San Francisco office, and as we like to say, could be out of California. So again, we are glad to be here. I will say that the situation that the city's been facing for many years regarding what we term non-compliance with the federal grant assurances. I think there's a lot of sentiment in the room, and here talking with the city manager about a potential pathway to solve that and get back to where the city would be able to accept those federal assistance funds. It does relate to access to the airport from some adjacent hangars and usage. It's been a situation that has been in place since roughly 2006, 2007 timeframe. Our office, we've worked it since we were established in 2012, and really with a lot of assistance from you, Mr. Mayor, and the city manager. I really see the glass as half full. I think, the collective expertise around the room, seeing the benefits and how we can come together to find a solution. And we're here to support that. We're asked occasionally to provide technical assistance and input. Been asked to provide some comments on proposed draft agreements, and we're happy to continue doing that. Tyler and I being here today was again just to put a face and a name, if you will, to federal government and our role within representing the agency, the airport. Thanks again for having us. We are glad to be here, and I think we're going to have a chance to answer any questions later. There are, Mr. Mayor, but again, happy to.
Thank you. Just to clarify a little bit, we had a pre-meeting over at City Hall with the FAA and city manager, myself, the council members, and we're talking about some of these issues and what we can do to resolve stuff. So I'm going to really turn it over to you, Steve, just to maybe show what we're thinking of a path-wise, and then I'm going to open it up for comments from public or questions to us or to the FAA. This is a work session, so I'll keep it a little bit loose, but I'm going to have to run some time factor. Things start to get out of where we're going. Anyway, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good afternoon, everybody. You just get rid of that filler. We'd be all set.
Yeah.
Or maybe vote Carol.
Absolutely.
So some of you in the room are more familiar with the issue flat out is city's ability able to get capital improvements funds to make improvements at the airport. As many of you know, I was here and then I was gone and now I'm here. And some things had occurred while I was gone that I had to get done by the FAA when I returned. One of the things that had happened while I was gone was that our access to federal funding and Williams was kind of helping with that quite well. So it was virtually right after I got. So we've been going all this time operating an airport without the benefit of not just the federal assistance for capital improvements, but we also have access to money called entitlement. That money literally $100,000 a year. But 2 years that I've been back, I've had to sign first $150,000 off. I went to bank it. Recently, I had to sign off the other $100,000 to the South. So they're benefiting from our loss, but hopefully get that out at some point. Yeah. So about a year ago, the city attorney could be his actually operated. The purpose of that was to discuss with you all possible pathway to getting federal funding back. One of the FAA requirements that people who operate through the fence have direct access to the field with their aircraft are required to sign it. The city. The city has to show proof of that to the FAA in order to qualify for those funds. Rather than spend a lot of time playing it, I guess the best thing. To get that. However, the line of communication never closed. And had subsequent, with some of you who have a vested interest in that airport property. And those conversations have brought to the mayor and I some good. You were able to share my pilot is important, and I think opens a pathway to finish. One of the issues on one of the these guys have allowed us to make that time more flexible, so that we get to the finish line, particular defense. For those of you who for instance, Gretchen's place area, her customers would just fly their airplane and the next flight now. But that's a residential. That's not difficult. That's so but we're commercial interests certainly difference. And so been brainstorming to try and get to like there. Our first director Matt and I last summer, but these guys have figured out some pathways to the finish line and Mayor and I council. They've been down to the airport together. They have time to set. They have to look first time. I think that the only thing that I wish I had today that I don't have today is because he's the guy who actually drafts the legal documents that we ask Paul to sign. So if I had to gap, if I had hazard guess, I would hope that armed with the information that we now have, it would. And Mike has his bosses too, that he has to go through for approval, so we have to run it up both places. But agreement that we have today on the latitude portion, I feel very confident that we're going to be able to. And had some private conversation, some which I have promised I would call some public. But just to say that those are positive. Anyway, that's all I have to report. Unless you want to, for the meeting this morning, if you want to add.
Well, there will be some new draft through the fence agreement that will need to be signed. I'll tell you my stand and why this has come to more forefront. The airport is really a very valuable part of the city, and it is an asset. And we can't just keep looking aside, letting it just go and deteriorate. I mean, it needs a lighting. It needs a lot of things. It needs a new taxiway. It needs a lot of things. And we've just been kicking the can down the road, and that is just not what I, as an elected official that is responsible for city assets, can allow just to let go by the side. So we're going to do everything we can possibly do to get this back in track, and let's start working on it. It's not an overnight thing, but we can surely make this happen and start getting the airport back in better shape than it is and what it has been for the last few years. I'm dedicated to that. City manager is. I think the rest of the council would be also. So that's really the bottom line of it. One thing that we have to be careful of, and what I learned today too, was that you have hangars that deal with airports. Those hangars are for airport type things. We can't have people storing their own personal cars or running a business out of them or doing something else. So that will be a very hard line situation, in my estimation, that those things are for airport use and for aircraft and so on and so forth. Not mean you can't work on your aircraft, doesn't mean you can't build one in there. It has to be aircraft related. So that's a very important part of this whole package that we want to make sure that keeps us out of trouble with the two over there and the ones above. So, but we're here to answer questions, discuss with you any of your issues you may have. That's what we're here for. We're taking no votes, but the only way to get this out is to talk about it. So that's why I'm holding a work session. So we're all about work. So anybody like to just come up to the mic and you will have to
I
come.
just have a question. What trouble is it in now?
You'll have to come up to the mic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we only require two things. You have to use the mic and you have to tell us who you are.
Mark Tartaglia, what is the problem now that we're trying to fix?
The problem is now we can't get any money to fix the airport
And why not?
because the FAA will not give us any, okay, unless we have through the fence agreement signed, sealed.
Tell me what through the fence agreement means.
Well, I'm gonna let the officials tell you
Okay.
what that is. If they will, if you wanna, is that your only question or do you have anything else?
Yeah, that's pretty much
Okay,
it.
you can always come back.
So when you look at airport property, it has certain definitions, just like all our property does. The federal interest in the airport is established with what we term as grant assurances, which the city has agreed to abide by with the acceptance of federal funds. So through the fence issue, in a sense, is activity, generally it's aviation related activity that occurs off the airport property, but the activity benefits from the airport property. And in this case, the airport is not receiving any recognition for that benefit. So getting some type of agreement so that there is recognition to the airport for the off airport, not on the airport property, use of the airport is what needs to be resolved. If that gets resolved, then the city would again be eligible to receive federal funding assistance.
Help you or?
So basically, the people that are there, you want them to pay access to be able to use the airport, is that what you're saying?
Yes, I mean, that'll be part of it. There is access fees.
Right. Nobody's paying that now, but you want to.
Just,
Hold on.
Yeah.
There is an access fee that's in the city code,
Uh-huh.
okay? And they pay that now,
Okay,
okay? It's $120 a year.
for the people who live on the airport.
And that's for people who operate aircraft into the field.
Okay, so anybody that has a plane stored in a hangar is paying that per person? To have access to their aircraft. Okay, and other than that, what are the other improvements that need to be done in order to make the FAA happy?
We have two projects that have been deferred for lack of funding.
Uh-huh.
One is to replace the existing taxiway.
Okay,
The taxiway not only is, and Peter and I spent a lot of time talking about this, it's not only a failed structure, but for new FAA standards, taxiways have to be farther away from the runway than they were when the field was built. So replacing that will also include moving it back farther.
so the wings don't tip when they go by each other? Pretty much.
One possible outcome, yes.
and there's no landing lights now. They've all been out, so what we need to
So,
update those.
yeah, so we need the landing lights, the landing lights right now are basically battery powered, solar powered,
Nice. Mhm.
lights that come on at dark.
So it would be the same thing, but more solar, more lights.
Well, I can't say. It would depend on what the airfield engineers would decide that they would.
We would Right now, we don't have an airport engineer. Lapsed, but as soon as we get these through the fence agreement signed, we will, the FAA requires us to go back and hire an engineer who expert in airports, and he will be the one that will do the studies for us and, you know, we say we want to do the lights, then he tells us what happens.
So through the fence, back again to that would be people that have property there have to pay, they had access to the airport besides the people that have the planes.
Yeah, it's not just pay, you have to sign a contract saying I'm going through the fence and part of that.
But that costs you money.
So,
No, doesn't?
Well, if you want your lawyer to. There's no ticket price
Okay,
for.
that's what I was curious.
but there is a $120 a year.
Yeah,
That's a totally separate animal. That's called an access fee. That's,
And what more things do we have to do in order to get them?
well, once we get through the fence, agreement signed by all. Then we'll present that to these guys and have that. That's.
There's some issues with, because there's two things going on in my mind. Okay, one is homes that have a hangar that basically come right off the taxiway. Yes, those are private homes, okay? Those are always approved automatically once they sign their agreement with us. Okay, now that happens all over the country. Then there's a set of private hangars that are off. That's a little bit different animal, so we will have to work with that separately, but we'll also make that happen too.
So what's the home have to do with it being there with access? You don't want anybody living on the airport, is that what you're saying?
You don't, yeah, you can't, you won't be living on airport property, you're off airport property, but your home has a hangar that are accessing and out.
So if your home is off the airport property, it's still considered being a home on airport property?
No, it's off airport property, but to use the property, you have to call it a fence.
Okay.
There's no fence there.
Yeah.
Back, you're laying out
Yeah,
your
so
hangar.
through me the.
Not for each private home, but the private homes are one issue, and the other is the commercial hangar separate from individual homes. That's not a home issue. But we can work both of those out.
Okay. Sounds good. Working's good.
Hello, Gretchen Buttafucci. So the runway is gonna come closer to our houses or the taxiway, is that just so I understand, or you could go other way or or property?
And forgive me, Gretchen, but I don't know exactly.
Okay,
But FAA standards require us, when we place a taxi to find this. Now, what we're gonna do first, of course, is design a taxi. It will be at that point where we make the decision exactly. A taxiway will be granted, obviously, the site it's on now is what. And it may not be. But the engineers come up with is going to have to be turned over to the FAA. Find some comments. Finished design will be by every. Actually,
okay, so then, I can still run my Airbnb out there, or I will not be able to, what,
yes, you can.
I can.
It's a
And-
private home.
That's a
Okay.
simple answer to this question.
Okay, then my other question is, you said the hangers, that was. And I do let people store things because. They're income. So I cannot do that, it has to be unless it's a plane, correct? I understand, right?
Okay. Property you own that has anchor,
Yeah,
like the rest of us would have a garage,
right,
okay? Your airplanes,
okay, can I have events there, like weddings? been heading a lot now there.
Can on your property, they can't allow that event. to fill out.
Never said it.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and let me see, hey Dad, are you there? Dad, hello Dad? Yes, yes, no.
The answer to the hangar situation.
Oh, hi, does Dad have any questions? Okay, that's my cool dad, he's awesome. All right, so, yeah, okay,
Want this to be a positive thing. We're all working as hard as we can to make, and that's what I want to do is make sure that when we show up with sign this through the fence, that there's no, oh, well, I heard this from so and so, somebody heard something else. That here, we're all on it, we all have the best interest in mind for the airport itself, and that's why I want to make sure we're all feeling okay about what we're going to try to do.
I have one more question.
Sure.
So if you own land out there, can you build a house on it, or are you not gonna allow more houses to be built if it's airport related? Like my dad's original plan was to build a house with hangars and try to get pilots. Is that allowed now, or is that not allowed?
Okay. The answer is, that's. Okay. If he property build, say, a dozen hangars and rent those out to other aircraft owners, that point he becomes a commercial operator. Okay, that's a different. That's, yeah.
Okay,
So what we would do is work with him to draft an agreement that pass muster both with the city. FAA. Then sign that agreement at that point.
But you were more interested in if you built a home, not a bunch of hangars.
I was considering buying my dad's property that he owns, so I wanted to know what I.
Well, the FAA is right there. They don't mind building a home that has access if you have to make an application. I might hear that director earlier today. I'm learning a lot too, so bear with me.
It's okay. Even after 30 years of doing this, I still learn. So to your question, ma'am, so part of what we look, really what we look to look at is compatible land. Now, generally, residential homes right next to an airport is not a good compatible land. However, Bisbee is a unique community, just like every community is, and you have to find the right application in what is compatible land use. So if you were considering, some type of, Airbnb, first off, the federal government and through the FAA does not control local land use. That falls to the city and or the county. Our interest would be is what is being proposed on that land in a compatible nature. That can take a lot of different ways. Certainly what you're talking about is an option. But again, that really decision is ultimately up to the local authority having jurisdiction. Certainly, we're available to opine on that. If the city would like us to. The key is that I would just drive home with kind of either scenario that's going to be the home type access or the commercial type access. Need to make sure that the airport is recognized as the asset, that it really, those uses are being connected. Ensuring that you have in that recognition.
Wouldn't new home have to have some requirement from you to be able to access that besides us?
Again, that would be residential through the defense agreement.
Just the rest.
And what we would encourage and recognize and recommend the city do, that you have a well-established, fair and equitable process for what the agreement is, and such that people can make applications to the city. And there would be a process that it gets, fair and equitable to anybody. And again, we can help the city get that process set up. Once that process is set up, there's really no need for the city to back to us and say, hey, we have this new agreement for parcel, ABC, please concur or whatever. Again, once the process is set up, then the city can go forward.
My name is Dan Calvin. One of the things that we kind of skipped. This is restrictions. The sixth. The airport and industrial zoning areas. Skip on here.
Right. But fortunately, that's all county. If it was in city land, we'd have a lot.
Dan, to answer your question, we're obviously aware that some of those situations that we didn't gloss over it. No, but we other people here, it is an issue that we know dealt with. And the city's done this before on other properties as well. We will partner with the landlord at the Cochise County Planning Department, effect modifications or exemptions. And, the current administration over at the county planning has been very popular. There was a day.
They owe us one too, because we left the whole high school.
So, on the CIP program, way we understood was it was different. It just it was the ghost was
Yeah,
fail comes back, meaning
yeah,
it's
you're absolutely
available.
right, but it's better to use it in the window than you see it, yeah. So
It's something
is
we have
that
to do.
at some future point then, in order to link capital.
Sure. So you keep talking about residential, can you explain the commercial? Clarify that, please. That makes sense.
Let me try. So I actually think the city manager kind of provided some insight to that in his comments. So the commercial entity, in a certain sense, what it ends up doing is devaluing the value. When you look at airport development from a very high level perspective, most airports accommodate what is needed for the aeronautical within the confines of the product, whether it be landing surfaces, hangars, support buildings. When facilities get constructed on adjacent property that's not owned by the airport, but yet utilize the asset, it tends to devalue the airport property. And what it almost it ends up being too unfair to users who do use the airport to pay fees that support the maintenance. So we're really trying to make sure that the airport receives the recognition that it's there, that it has needs and maintenance, and to make sure you understand that the capital funding, the federal assistance funding that we provide is just that, for capital. There are assurances that when capital funds are provided for pavement, that the owner of the facility maintains that pavement. Whether it be cracks occur in pavement, you gotta repair the cracks. You gotta maintain the pavement, you gotta maintain the lights. If a fixture gets broken, you have to go get a replacement, fix it. You're obligated to operate. We don't provide funds, for pavement. So that's where the revenue piece kind of comes in, and ensuring that there's a financial revenue stream so that the airport has a long financial to be able to meet those up. There is a portion of federal assistance grants that the sponsor has to provide matching. In this case right now, AIP, Airport Improvement Program funds are provided at 95% federal share. 5% of that is left to the owner. Fortunately, in the state of Arizona, there's the opportunity to get 2.5% of the 5% from the state. So since you're paying 2.5 cents on the dollar, you get that. Probably about one of the best financing deals.
So you're talking about the fees for the residential, the commercial not have to pay those fees also.
Recognition for the airport can come in many. If you look, for example, to a scenario to understand what the city of Scottsdale has with their airport. There are numerous off airport, not on airport, commercial type activities. Many of those activities have aircraft that use the airport. There is a process in place where users of those facilities, when they have an aircraft, they make application. City of Scottsdale Airport, they go through a process, they pay a registration fee to access, and they're provided a sense with an access mechanism to get. So again, that's where the recognition, financial recognition comes forward, because those entities generally are not paying any other fees that other airports are subject to. For fuel on the airport, you're generally going to pay part of the flowage fee. That, if you have a hangar on the airport property, you're going to pay some type of. So it's meant to make sure that it's fair and equitable to all, and that if you're using the airport, you're providing that.
So has that not been done in the past? All right.
Well, without the agreements, you can't get. At least that's the way we see it. So the agreements are key to making sure that you establish the process.
So in my question, I guess, in the past, that's never framed. Now having fence or whatever.
I can only tell you that from the perspective of 2012, when we opened our office, this was the situation. It's gone through as a city had conversations with various individuals over time. Starts, stops, trying to resolve it. We are closer than we ever have.
So since they're commercial, is there any way the city can sublet without destroying at least them?
Again, they're not on airport city owned. I believe.
Right, but even though the city can't and some let them themselves to fall with the practice.
Yeah, I only went to a public school. So sorry.
Well, it's, the private owner owns it, but then as a city, we then sublet the hangar, so they're not destroying it. So then that would be going through us.
I think in the scenario you're describing, the city would have to get in the ownership of the property position first, and then
So there's no way to sublet it without them.
Again, now the private owners, I guess the private owners could approach the city with some scenario, but that would again have to private owner and the city negotiate. If they come to what they believe is an agreement that they would like us to apply on, then we can
I'm just wondering if that would work. I mean, let's say if the city leased those facilities and turned around and rented them under the auspices of the city, then would that be falling within your regulations? Because now it's not.
We'd have to see an agreement to kind of know how that might work.
Still has to benefit the airport at whole. That's the whole point.
The agency, we try to make sure there's clear understanding about what, our authority is, and local land use is something I have authority. However, there is significant federal interest in the airport because it's part of the national aviation system. And, the federal government has made investments throughout that to ensure the health and overall viability. So, we'd have to see something like that. If a scenario like that came forward, that again, you had two willing partners who come to, an agreement, then we could look at something. But I couldn't tell you for sure which way. So, because it's not only my decision, I have subject matter experts that I have to get approval from. I certainly can be champion if it's the right solution, but I have to, there's other people within the agency.
Mayor, I think that there were kind of two questions there. One about the answer to that question is yes, we do charge a fee. It's in the city code, and it's referred to as an access fee. And one of those defense operators collects that fee from their tenants and remits it to the city. Currently, the fee is $120 a year. So that's that piece. And as far as the other piece is concerned, I'm not sure whether or not we've ever considered a sublease scenario like you mentioned, but there have been discussions in the past about acquisition and ownership. I can't say exactly where we are with that.
My question was actually if there was a differentiation. Price, and if it was
And the answer is yes, there is. A residential through the fence operator is someone who probably owns a single aircraft. Uses it for their personal use on a property. Commercial through the fence operator makes space available that they rent to other people to get.
I understand that, so I was asking something. Do they pay the same? Commercial pay the same to residential? That was. And if it was.
And collective, in fact, I got to check with it.
So with commercial, are they being charged for individual hangar?
It's by the aircraft.
So I guess that brings to this aircraft in there. That's my question. Is it a monthly fee with the potential of an aircraft being in there? If it's empty, then are they being charged?
They're not being charged unless there's an aircraft to charge.
You're saying, yeah, I'm Dr. Jimmy Shorten. Say, you said that, the air hangar is only good for an airplane, but can you put your car in there?
Sure.
Okay, that's okay. And
How about while you're flying?
Yeah.
well, yeah, but I mean, if it's a hangar home, if you're living in a home, I'm looking at directions. So, if I want to work on my carburetor on the car, I can't do that in the hangar?
Should be aircraft.
I mean, you can change your oil in the aircraft, right? But you can change your oil in your car.
I'll refer to the FAA again, but they're very much about all hangars have to, what happens in them has to be aircraft related in some way. Am I thinking correctly?
Well, I can call my car Cessna if you'd like.
So that means.
Yeah.
So, first off, the question of, what is allowable and is not allowable in hangars. Remember to start with that the hangars are for aircraft storage type activities. That's the intent. If, federal funding assistance is provided to it, that's the intent There have been cases, where airports had complaints filed against them and they were found in violation of their grant assurances. Somewhat related to your question, sir, but in the sense that the city wasn't, their sponsor wasn't monitoring the situation. What we've seen is that without the airport sponsor actively managing their asset of hangars, what's allowable, what isn't allowable, that's where the problems come in. There is specific guidance that the agency has published about aviation hangar use. And, you know, we'd have to refer to that guidance and the kind of the specific questions that you're having. There are allowances for example, as the mayor said, if you pull your aircraft out of the hangar, you're intending to go flying that day, and park your car inside the hangar while you're out flying and do the reverse. Those type of scenarios are allowable.
It should be a hangar by itself though, right? I'm talking about a hangar home.
Well, first off, the hangar home would most likely not be on airport property. So what's in the residential through the fence agreement? What kind of conditions and stipulations?
I got you.
But again, you know, the intent is, you know, aviation use.
Important part of giving the airport what's needed to be able to be an airport, and if you use all the airport facilities for things other than airport, then you're not really basing your use.
Mayor, that said, the scenario that you just posed, if you pull your car into the hangar on your hangar home, and you change the oil, and you remove that vehicle from.
No, I mean, like I'm stashing in there overnight. Or I got like
If you're going to San Diego, okay, park your car in there while you're playing San Diego. That's not.
but if I live there,
Should have a garage.
so you want to have a separate garage for the hangar. Have you seen the site of the hangar?
As a matter of fact, for many years.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let me leave you with this, okay? That's what Mike just said, okay? Residential through the fence can be modified as long as they're approved. So if you buy Gretchen's house and you have a specific thought in mind that you for, then we have to negotiate it through.
Yeah, I mean, it'll definitely be an airplane.
I mean, there's a standard agreement, okay, that you sign that. The FAA guidelines, you're good. Do something a little different, it's not too different, then there might be wiggle room for negotiation. I would suggest negotiate that agreement. So,
Hi, I'm Mark Gregg. Familiar with, I don't know if you're there, California. Oh, okay. Correct. I don't know if you're familiar with Big Bear Airport or Catalina Island Airport. Those are both in California. One receives FAA funding, one does not. One's a real airport, and one isn't. Catalina Island Airport is extremely mismanaged, not receiving FAA funding, so you don't have ending lines. You have a lot of things you need as a pilot to safely come and go. Big Bear Airport does receive FAA funding. It has all kinds of things going on, including hangars, restaurant, a great runway, wonderful staff. You have services to maintain your airport, airplane. Get wrong. Catalina Island, fix it in the dirt side of the airstrip. If you should be so unfortunate to break on an island, which does happen every year. So my question to you guys as the FAA is what specifically would we as the airport receive for, I feel, handing over control and getting into these rather complicated agreements with private property.
You're talking municipal airport versus a private airport. Catalina's private.
It is private, but they have the choice to take FAA funding or not. On the island, to not save the money.
So I can't speak to the specifics of those two airports.
What about Whiting?
Well, so I'm going to echo what city manager said initially. So once the funding is, the AFL facility is kind of started the runway and work our way back. So what's the condition of the paper? If it's failing, what's the solution to the failure? So crack sealing, a minor type repair, or is it, something we need to get into the structure? We've been talking about lighting. What's the condition of the lighting? Is it, what's failing with it? What needs, what's, if there's other things, whether it be drainage, grading, all those type of things that enhance the level of operational safety are under consideration. So the city is the owner of the airport, then really prepares what they believe are their priority task items. The city manager mentioned, we engage with the engineering design, for the city in that manner. The appropriate facilities that define. There's a process where we have planning, so design standards, there's a requirement to apply to that. Going through all those steps, ultimately can, lead to the executes a public bidding document for construction, and then the AFP funding is there. But again, there's a long list of elements. Okay, what's the priority?
Is that investment?
No, that's an entitlement funding. There are opportunities for competitive funding. We have competitive funds in the state that we look at, and there are competitive funds nationwide. They have different risks and a different competitive. So that's where we come in and strategize. Okay, we think this is really critical. We see here. There's probably more art.
So, the part to expand upon that, the existing gate runway, that was basically or go runway. Contract was what? 2007. That was a competitive project. So struggling number how much paid for that project at that point was probably very little by today's standards, but sticks in my mind. Maybe $1.5 million, which that's so I don't find it a lot of times because we are required things as airport required to service the second thing we're so so we're required to do a master plan. What the master plan does is it prioritizes projects that are done mostly in the order in which they, so that when we visit these guys to ask for money, they can look at our master plan and say, okay, you guys have figured this out, so go ahead. So those are two items that haven't been done. Have an airport master. Doing
I'm Peter Levine. We have a local Friends of the Airport group. I'm myself in the fourth condo. And also 30 years ago, I bought an airplane based it here at Bisbee Airport. There ever since, so seen come and go in 30 years of this airport. I just wanted to clarify, I thought that after reading the FAA memorandums of 13 that talks to the defense, this is another one I read recently, 2020. You can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do that. And I thought the problem here was the commercial rental. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe that's not it. Hear everybody talking really positively about finding some way forward, and it was a real hard jeopardizing something close on that, and I'd like to ask maybe
I would say that, policy is policy, but there is always an opportunity to present these circumstances, if you will. We are not, from my perspective anyway, at a position of loggerheads with the city. We are here to provide input on ideas and thoughts and help the communication. And again, I really have to applaud all of you in the city, but as city manager mentioned earlier, the lines of communication in this issue have never closed. It's just, there's some tough conversations. They're ongoing. I still believe the glass is half full. I do have faith in everyone in this room that the city's going to be city manager said by the end of this calendar year, and would sure love to be back here later in the year. All thanks.
I'm Marilyn Seabold. I'm sure you're all waiting for me to come up here because everybody, but I'm the owner of 16 hangars that are at the forefront. The city and I are going to work together and try to come to some understanding that is beneficial to both of them. And at this time, that's all I will say. But so it may not be a problem after all. So,
You'll mind, I will say exactly what we said together is that it's best interest of the airport is your biggest concern and ours.
yes,
We want to make the airport a campus. So as long as you stay on that commitment, we stay on that commitment. Don't see a problem.
when Bill brought me from Maryland, with newly found money that a husband left me, he loved this airport and he wanted to see it succeed and to improve. So we filed all the right forms with the FAA then, and then we built our house, we filed the right form. And they didn't say we couldn't do anything. A lot has changed over the years, obviously. And it was through the fence agreement thing was a real problem for Bill. He died in 2012. And so I'm left to deal with all this, and I am trying my best. And I love the airport too. I am very involved. Was on the airport commission for 20 years before being moved. And I'm planning on getting back on it. So to help more. I remember a lot of things because I was secretary for minutes. And I think I'm a valuable asset to the airport. So we will try to figure something out and come to something that is beneficial to both the city and to me. And I'll say about that. Thank you.
Anyone else? this helped everybody understand that we're just not don't want to just keep kicking the can down the road. We want to get this resolved. Start helping to improve, back. Or good asset to the city. So, with that said, seeing no other responses, I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion, a second to adjourn. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. We are adjourned.